We do plan to share this recording publicly in the event that a student, parent, staff, or community member would like to know what was discussed. If you do not wish to be recorded, please let us know at this time. Thank you.
Just a quick question on the user so I will call this meeting to order at 6:03. And if you please all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the first item on our agenda tonight is board recognition. So I will open the floor to board comments if there's anything that you would like to speak to today.
I would like to take a minute and call out our school counselors. The week of February 7th through 11th was National School Counseling Week, and now, more than at any time I can ever recall, school counselors play a major role in the health and wellness of our kids at school and at home. And I just want to really lift them up and give them another acknowledgement and tell them thank you for all of their hard work. We actually have 8 school counselors here in the district, 4 at the high school. Maria Reyes, Debbie Reed, Shelley Smith, Penny Nelson Schlegel. We have 2 at Orting Middle School with April Reynolds and Robin Joy. We have 1 at Farmington Ridge with Becca Edick, and 1 at Orting Primary School with Megan Barbara. And if you didn't get a chance to, take a look at some of what was put out there with them. They have little stories and why they do what they do, and the joy that they find in the jobs that they do with our kids. So that's it for me.
Thank you very much. Rick, did you have anything you wanted to add tonight?
No.
All right, I had a few things on my list. Number 1, I want to thank the Orting voters. We've been thanking everyone since the levy passed, and I would just like to formally thank everyone in this meeting tonight. It's a big decision that will benefit our students for a long time to come, so I appreciate that. I also want to give a shout out to our girls wrestling team. I'm so proud of them. We did a big state send-off today, so we wish them luck in their next endeavor. Representing Orting in the state championships. Also, if anyone has any game updates from girls hoops up at Enumclaw, please raise your hand. I will happily run this meeting for updates. So we're really proud of all the girls. I also want to recognize our sports med, Orting High School sports med, as well as our primary school, Orting Primary School leadership team at the school, which I love the idea of young leaders at our primary school. But they did a food drive. So community service and community mindfulness and taking care of each other are all values that I feel are important. So I want to give a shout out to those groups. And then lastly, congratulate Superintendent Captain Bueller for somebody else St. Helens received her. He has a very full plate, and I'm excited he was able to take on that challenge this weekend and succeed.
So that spider coat, you're not supposed to, you're really, it's a real deal. Right on.
We just got a quick message from Joanne, who's on the way, she's stuck in traffic. I know how that goes. So now I would like to open up the floor to community and staff comments, and thank you. We've got a handful of folks who are speaking tonight, so I'll read your name. We'll go down the list. You each get 3 minutes to address the board, and it is time, so we'll have to ask you to wrap it up right at 3 minutes, please, because there are multiple speakers. We want everybody to have a chance. We're also limited to 12 minutes per topic, and coincidentally, we have 4 individuals speaking on masks, so that's perfect. So I'd like to first invite Chris Hoffhoff. Sorry if I butchered your name. So please come on.
I'm gonna
Oh, okay.
give my 3 minutes.
RCW.
Sorry, could you say your name? Because it
Oh,
was
sorry,
recorded.
Alexis Ramos.
Thank you.
So I'm just going to read a letter that we prepared for you tonight. Dear Orting School Board, never before in the history of Washington has your job been so difficult. I extend my gratitude for your service. Since the National School Board Association has attempted to weaponize the FBI against concerned parents, I'm unfortunately compelled to state this disclaimer. This letter and the enclosed documents are in no way meant to cause you to feel threatened in any way. I hope you see these documents as an opportunity to receive our support. The enclosed public records disclosure requests have been served to all directors of the Orting School District. Many districts across the state, including Seattle School District and several more throughout King County, will be or already have been served the same documents over the next 30 days by thousands of parents statewide who have come together as a unified voice. To ensure this effort is recognized as a demonstration of support, the Pierce County Sheriff has also been given a copy of these documents and informed of our peaceful intent. We recognize there is a fundamental conflict of interest between school government and parents. School government has a vested interest in the system as a whole, while parents have a vested interest in the children. We have identified that the source of this conflict may stem from the fact that our local school boards have been forced to give away increasingly more decision-making authority to the Washington State School Directors Association and other state agencies. The Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Reichel, has clearly threatened to withhold taxpayer funds that rightfully belong to our school districts, based on whether or not we comply with health policies we may or may not agree with. Nowhere in the revised Code of Washington is power granted to Mr. Reichel or the Office Superintendent of Public Instruction to withhold or bribe with the funds they task to dispense to local districts. Is it possible that if Mr. Reichel indicates or acts on the threat of withholding funds, this would imply extortion on his behalf? We, the people, founded this country with a structure that was designed to keep the greatest authority at the local level of government. Yet our governor and state agencies have made unilateral decisions for the whole population, while ignoring the voices of local school boards and parents. Perhaps we've lost sight of the original version of a strong local authority when we let state and federal agencies like WSSDA and OSPI and the National School Board Association gain control to withhold our state funding over matters that should be a personal medical choice for every citizen. All of us share the responsibility of getting ourselves into dangerous predicament of a few people dictating to the masses. We also share the responsibility of getting ourselves out of this predicament. There is a solution and a path forward. I'm going to yield my time to Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, Chris Oakloff.
Chris, can I ask, I just want to make sure we're respecting this time. Okay, perfect. You have a chance to catch up. Thank you very much.
OHS graduate 1982, 2026, maybe.
I have faith.
I'm going to continue with the document. The documents enclosed are our first act of helping you, our local school board, take back the rightful authority to determine how best to represent the parents of this district. Please use these public disclosure requests as an opportunity to educate yourselves and us so we can better understand the entanglement we find ourselves in with OSPI, WSSDA, and other state agencies who are overstepping their lawful boundaries. According to RCW 28A.345.020, all Washington State school boards are required to be members of the WSSDA. Most other states do not have laws that compel membership. Their school boards still have the authority to choose whether or not they want to take guidance from various state agencies, but not here in Washington. In RCW 28A.343.100, school board members are again compelled by law, starting in 2022, to take governance training in cultural competency, diversity, equity, and inclusion standards. Those words are referring to critical race theory, sexual education for children as young as 5 years of age, and curriculums that promote transgenderism. These are just two examples of how our state legislature has taken away your authority to choose what you're taught and what you will be compelled to promote to our children. Representative Joel McIntyre attempted to introduce a bill in the current legislative session that proposed that school board membership in WSSDA be optional rather than mandatory. Making membership optional would return decision-making authority back to the local level and send a clear message to WSSDA that we erroneously let power become too centralized. WSSDA has been treating Washington students and parents as if they belong to one large district rather than representing the authority of the 295 elected school boards in this state. Unfortunately, Joel McIntyre was just recently strong-armed into dropping this bill under pressure from the WSSDA. We, the parents of Washington, finally comprehend how little authority you have left to represent us. It is time we come together to restore your authority and ours.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting the time as well. Now, I'd like to invite Fisher. Oh, sorry, I'm just working right down the list.
Okay, I think I was supposed to.
Page 3, yes.
Yeah, sorry, this was the one.
I saw that.
Summer Chance.
Okay, so you guys are in a group, but there's 4 of you speaking.
It's only 3 of us.
3 speaking, okay. Gotcha. Go ahead, Summer.
In addition to providing the information requested in these documents, we ask that the Orting School Board do all of the following. 1, reach out to Representative Joel McIntyre to give him your support of the bill. The proposed WSSDA membership be optional. Whether it's this year or next year, that bill must get passed for the future of our children. 2, strongly urge WSSDA to withdraw membership from the NSBA. Currently, almost 20 other states have left the NSBA, and Washington parents are very disappointed to see WSSDA's silence on the matter. And 3, pass a resolution acknowledging and affirming that parents are the primary stakeholders in their children's future. Several other districts in Washington have passed this resolution. As we finish the 2021-2022 school year, we envision a harmonious partnership between parents, school district leadership, and legislators to restore the freedom of personal choice over what our teachers and students wear on their faces and put in their bodies, as well as restore authority to the local level of government. However, if these freedoms are ignored by the Orting School District School Board, we will take our children out of the public school system by the fall of 2022. As you are well aware, over 55,000 children have been withdrawn from the Washington State public school system over this year, and that number will more than likely triple if mask mandates are upheld and a COVID vaccine is made a requirement of attendance. As a body of parents across Washington State, we have heard your collective plea for cooperation and help. You've been sincerely telling us that your hands are tied by WSSDA and OPSI. We understand you now, so together let's untie your hands and restore your authority to represent us, the parents of Orting School District. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Fisher?
I'm Tom Fisher.
Perfect. Thank you. Welcome.
I'm a manager and engineer for Electron Hydro up the river. And well, just because these guys are talking, I will say I really support independent schools. I went to 12 years of Catholic school. In part, I thank my parents for the independence of it. So I really encourage you guys to be independent here. This is quite different than other places in the state. I'm here to talk to you about locating your next schools. I spent my adult career working in rivers and understanding real well this particular river brings down 1 million tons of bed load from Mount Rainier every year that dumps into Innocent Bay. Quite a bit of it comes from the White River. But we still get a few 100,000 yards coming down through here. We dig 1,000 yards out every day in the summertime. And just that, filling what we have. And so over time, this valley was built, well, it used to be a law came through here, but it's because the rivers, over time, they build up their bank, they build them up, and they flow over, and eventually makes this nice, perfectly level plain. Then we plant houses on them, and then we either dredge the river or build up dikes, and pretty soon it'll be like a Skagit River where the bottom of the river is higher than the farmland around it, and the dikes keep getting taller because they won't dredge it. And so that's just a backstory, but I also look at schools as like, that's our future, and that should be paramount in what we want to spend our money on and our kids. So I'm going to encourage you to look at land up on the hill that is out of the valley and not in the valley. There are also places where, in an emergency, they could be used for safety, security for other people other than students. And in areas where they had built schools in either flood zones or tidal places, they spend millions of dollars trying to figure out how to make it safe, because it's, you know, and to me, it seems that as you're looking forward, it doesn't make sense to have the hard drills for your students when, if they're out of the hard zone, you wouldn't have to worry about that. And you don't have to worry about future flooding. Because eventually this valley is going to, either something has to change. It's either be dredged, the river will be dredged, or the dikes will be higher, or maybe in the end they'll have farms back in the valley and houses up on the hill. But if I was king, all the houses would be on the hill, all this would be farmland. But anyway, I just wanted to give you another perspective, and thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Jerry Stacy Lopez?
Oh, I didn't, we're not speaking.
Oh, you were planning on speaking?
No, I thought I was just signing in.
Okay. Oh, yeah, so I'm sorry. I think that's it. Okay. I think that's all our speakers this evening. I just want to thank everybody. Thank you for attending our meeting and addressing the board and bringing your thoughts to us. Appreciate that. Should explain, as you're talking, I'm taking notes on what you're saying. That's what I'm talking. I'm typing, but I'm listening and taking notes. Now we'll turn it over to the superintendent's report.
Wonderful. We have some slides we're going to pull up where you're going to see a glimpse of a updated logo and color scheme that we've been working on for the last several weeks with our social media accounts and other publications.
If you're feeling too slow, feel free to move about the room.
Thank you, Ms. Bonnie. So these are just a few highlights that have happened around the system since the last time we were in a regular board meeting. Majorly prevalent on my mind is the levy. We are super appreciative to have voter support. In our communication that we put out, we recognize that we don't have the support of everybody, and we recognize that we want to continue your interest around collaboration and listening and partnership with our community. At this point, we believe that tomorrow that levy will be certified as a yes. That will provide much needed resources to continue much of the work we've been talking about. There are additive bills in session right now that could impact schools. There are bills around increasing counseling, social emotional support, and nursing. So in the next 2 weeks, as session wraps up, we'll have further updates for you on what the implication is. But this will establish the authority for the district to collect levy through 2023 to 2026. Looking at development, I'll share some numbers with you in a moment. That the Hawley neighborhood was announced one of the top 50 neighborhoods of master plan communities in the United States. So that is part of their communication plan. They're selling like hotcakes. As we see development update, this is kind of an updated 4-year projection for you with current numbers. Your attorney, Ms. Denise Stiffarn, and myself have worked with all of our developers to get current number projections. And again, these are projections, but their best guess over their forecasting growth. And we can see some of the numbers next year, 712 single-family homes. So when you add it all up, through 2026 for the life of the levy, our current projection is an add of 2,641 homes. To the gentleman's point, we will have no choice but to proceed with growth up on the hill at some point. There's not enough space on the valley floor to begin to touch that. So part of what we're going to bring to you is a plan. You'll hear from a couple of our team members in executive session, some updates on land. And we'll bring a plan to you over the coming months that will help us to look not only at the short term, but the longer term, and align to your interest about community involvement. There will no doubt, as we lay that forecast through of how to move to that, we'll have plenty of opportunities for students, parents, staff, community voice in that process. Looking at wrestling, we do have some state title winners. Our girls won the academic state title for 2A. They'll be recognized at Tacoma Dome. We also have girl wrestlers participating. Our boy wrestlers are ranked the #1 team in the state. There's a high degree of optimism that they could come away this year with a state title. Last time we did that was 2012. Coach Coleman is really excited about that. So we have a lot of representation at the Dome. As a reminder, you have the ability to go. You're on a pass list as a board of directors. And there was a feature article in the Tacoma News Tribune about our wrestlers, which is really cool. Girls wrestling, again, they'll be announced on the podium. We'll have some pictures and awards. And what we might want to recommend is maybe that March meeting, bring in our title winners, which would be our girls wrestlers, boys if they're successful, and do some recognition at this level as well. So we'll talk about that, but no pressure heading into the weekend. We did have a resource fair at the high school. Our early learning ECAP partnerships were there. We had social, emotional, behavioral support for families. There was a vaccination event, that was on the 26th at Orting High School, and about 85, 86 people attended that with varying degrees. That early learning component especially is an interest that we would have. So many kids don't have that head start with preschool when they come in. The space is going to be a challenge in the near term, but in your interest in terms of more intervention, more support, early learning, that's a partnership we developed. They hired another teacher, and that person was down here in attendance working with families trying to get that connection. We did have the annual staff versus student knowledgeable, and I will tell you the students killed it this year. This is, I think, the second time in history where the students took the title. The staff indicated faulty touch buzzer boards. The students didn't believe that. Well, I think it was an 18-6 ratio is where the points were. So they're headed into their regional and state tournament, and the students just killed it. Did an awesome job. We do have an audit coming up. Every year we are audited through all of our finances, state and federal. It's a financial and single program. They'll do a deeper dive on not only our normal state finances through our F-195, F-196, but they'll also do a deeper dive on the ESSER grant and title funding. So part of the state's process is to be the audit arm for the federal grants that we receive, and those are the two that they're going to take a deeper dive, and 2 of you will be invited to attend. We did have National School Counseling Week. Part of our interest is around student staff voice recognition, so we just want to continue those positive messages out there to make sure our staff and the community know what's happening and what the impact is, and get some girls, boys happening too. We did have a professional development day. All of our teachers engaged in really deep learning around the goals they presented to you in December. And your board work sessions, you've been receiving regular updates about that. In 2 weeks, on the 3rd, we'll be at Orting Primary, where we hear about how they're making their goals come to action. And it was just a wonderful day to see the teachers coming together in collaboration and supporting kids. And when we think about agency, as you saw at the high school workshop, we really want to value that idea of student voice. And so those are just a few pictures where we saw our FFA students and how they earned their recognition this year as a new program and what they were thinking about in terms of heading into state competition. We see our business program in terms of their design and the Card's Nest and marketing, which was all student-led and creative, how they did those presentations, wonderful. It's a little shout out I included where our band program, we had multiple students receive state recognition for the arts. And that was not only the focus that you heard in our secondary presentations with middle school, high school, but when we see agency and staff are getting those shout outs to one another and putting those positive messages out there, it's just not Rashad by himself that's putting those messages. Staff are starting to build that. And we want to continue that process where we're seeing that recognition go out there in public. We have some announcements. I was really cool about this. When we think about the pandemic learning, my own child suffered tremendously. He was isolated, disconnected. The work was disengaging. And we were able to get kids back in the classroom focused on meaningful learning. Here they built a seismic model where they have Play-Doh and noodles and a seismometer on the side. They're testing forces and application. That's Mr. Saith's class at the middle school. It's just phenomenal learning in action, and those are the stories we want to continue to tell. And as you think about space and growth, what you want to think about is future programs and how we're building for marketable jobs for the future for our kids. And so that'll be a conversation, just an example of what that looks like in action. Service and community is a big focus of our strategic work. We had several athletes and staff, over 20, go to the local park on the 7th on a Saturday. Track, baseball, pass, pitch, and soccer. Focus on that give back. That's a focus that we want to continue on per your direction with community involvement with our staff and kids. And this just, boy, I cried. And I'm just not even embarrassed to say that I cried. The inclusion basketball, unified basketball, that was scheduled for a night event, and we had various illnesses. The pandemic kind of spiked last month. And they rescheduled during the school day intentionally because they wanted to get as many students there as we possibly could. The band was playing 80 songs, Van Halen, AC/DC, they were rocking, kids were cheering, every basketball point scored, students were on their feet, just making those kids feel included, valued. We definitely believe that we want to have continued events like that through track into the spring, but it was just a wonderful, heartwarming example because it was student-led. Students were coaching one another, supporting one another, cheering one another. And when we think about those words, whether it's connection, inspiration, inspire, empower, that event alone embodied all of those ideals that you tried to set forth of how to really engage, empower, inspire kids in their learning. And it was a tremendous, successful afternoon. Several parents left in tears because their students have never had a more powerful school day. Super cool. So that's it that I have for the last month, and we'll be happy to visit Orting Primary. We can see what that looks like in your context in a couple weeks.
Thank you very much. We have a financial report prepared by Ms. Gannon. Is there any questions? No questions? Okay. Just had a few comments. As you know, the revenue by category, I watched that closely, my commercial budgeting background. And the numbers were all over the board, but I understand why, I think, and I was happy to see expenses right in line with expectations. I just wanted to let you know I was looking, I noticed, and I understand, so that's cool. Also, thank you for the notes of roof expenses, and it was great to see our voted debt finally expire or fall out of the budget, be done with paying the debt for the OMS and OHS additions. And now, also, this one's prepared by Debbie. We have our budget planning process and timeline. Are there any questions on the process? No? Okay. A lot of steps in that timeline that you grows each year. And then insurance report, also prepared by Debbie. Didn't see any questions come through for that.
To be clear, this is the insurance report directly related to lifetime employment benefits.
Workman's comp. And I will invite Steve Brad to the podium to speak about sexual health education update.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to bring you this update. As the packet that I presented to you, you have a lot of this information, but I kind of wanted to highlight a couple of key ideas around this. When this law, Senate Bill 5395, Comprehensive Sexual Health Education, was passed in 2020, it generated a lot of excitement and some fervor around that. And I would have to admit that both as a parent and as an educator, I was part of that crowd going into it based on what I was hearing about it. Having had the opportunity to go and learn more about it and whatnot, I realize now that a lot of that excitement that was around it was kind of based on some inaccurate information relative to what the law required, as well as it was really fueled by one particular curriculum that OSBI approved that still surprises me that it got OSBI's approval. It's a curriculum called the 3 Rs. And people were using that as a reference point to what was going to be required to be taught to students. The reality that we face is that school districts and parents continue to have the authority to determine what our kids are taught based on what we determine to be developmentally appropriate for our kids. The only changes to the previous guidelines for sexual health education for what was considered comprehensive sexual education in the beginning is the inclusion of age-appropriate information about bystander training and affirmative consent. And also the assurance that the instruction that we're doing is medically and scientifically accurate and evidence-informed and inclusive of all students regardless of their protected class. The comprehensive guidelines for sexual health education are for grades 4 through 12. Grades K through 3 are not required to have anything except social emotional learning, which is already in our practice. We use the second step curriculum already in those grade levels, and in that particular curriculum, there is instruction for kids about kind of bystander training, kind of piece in terms of how to establish and advocate for their own safety and the safety of others. There's no required curriculum that we are expected to use or adopt. Parents still maintain the last right of refusal of whether their kids are taught anything relative to that curriculum. We provide the curriculum for parents to see the curriculum and get exposed to it 1 month before it's expected to be taught. And we have a process for parents who can opt their student out of that curriculum and receive alternative education during that time. Our current reality is that at the time this law was passed, the Orting School District was already compliant with all the expectations of needing, except for the needing of adding an additional grade level at the high school. And we had made compliance in all the things except for the bystander training and the affirmative consent, because those two pieces were new. But we have provided it at all the different grade levels. The education that we are providing kids, we have spent the time going through. We started with the middle level, and we reviewed the curriculum to make sure that it was in alignment with the expectations of the law. We had a parent meeting in the fall. We had a lot of parents show up for that. The instruction has already gone through, and it's working out really well. We're now currently finalizing the instructional components for the high school, and that will also be afforded parent information night where parents can speak to the teachers and the high school administration. I'll be there as well, and see the curriculum and make a decision for what they feel is acceptable for their own students. And then I'm also working right now with PTR Assistant Principal Nita Hill on what the fourth grade, fifth grade, one of those two grade levels, what's going to be happening during there, just to make sure we're in alignment. That will be for the 22-23 school year, and when we get that done, we will be in complete compliance because the 22-23 school year is when everything has to be done. So that's just a brief update and just trying to bring that back to your attention and let you know where we stand and sit with that. If you have any questions for me, I'd be more than happy to take them.
So there hasn't been, since this bill, any additions to our curriculum here for Orting, is what you're saying?
So what we have done is we have made sure that what we're teaching is actually in alignment with the expectations. So for example, at the middle level, what we added was the bystander training and the affirmative consent. And then we looked to make sure that we were in alignment with their other expectations, which we already were.
Okay.
And then at the high school, we had to add another grade level. It has to happen within twice within 9 through 12, and we only had the primary at one grade level. So we're currently working right now with that. We are looking at a curriculum that OSBI has approved, and it's focus is in my head, and that's not it. I got it here. I don't know what happened to him.
Were we doing static feedback or something?
So,
Yeah, I can hear it.
Someone's phone.
It says on the other side, yeah.
So it's the flash curriculum that's actually, OSBI, it's a King County curriculum. Now what we're doing with that is it's a binder about this big. And we are only using the elements of it that align with the expectations, but then also align with what our expectations are. There's parts of that curriculum that we have determined that we're not going to use based on what we know about our community, what we know about our kids.
And so this is something that parents can have access to
Yes.
actually view the curriculum if they have any concerns about what's being taught.
Yes,
And that's going to be the same thing that's in the classroom.
that's right.
Where can they go to get that? Who would they ask?
So we'll present that. So that'll come out, so like the OMS that came out, we sent an email out to all the parents about when the evening was. The curriculum map, that is a one-page map with a link, or multi-page map with the links on it, that they can actually go, they can see the PowerPoint slide deck that the teachers are using, they can see the elements of the curriculum that the teachers are using, and they'll have access to that 1 month prior to instruction.
Will it be clear what is and what is not included?
We don't normally take questions from the community. It's okay, it's all right.
I'll be happy to talk with you after the meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Board, any questions? Additional questions?
Can you be included when you give that message out to, because you give it up to Orting Middle School, will we be included as well?
Yeah, the Orting High School next, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for the detailed documentation. I would invite the community to check out board docs if you want to read through what Steve just explained.
And I'll be happy to talk with anybody after the meeting too.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have, we're on to the second reading of policy considerations. We've got 4 documents that are open for final discussion or a motion to approve.
I do want to ask if there's any way we should leave on the one about the personal restraint.
Board policy 32468, or no, 3246, board policy, restraint, isolation, and other uses of reasonable force.
Right.
Would you like to pull that one out for further discussion?
Or if you want to go over it now, just the whole idea that there's, at no point are we able to use that. Is that what it's saying?
Let's pull that out for further discussion and clarification, and we can
Okay.
hone your questions, and Chris, maybe you could address those at a later time. I want to make sure we're all clear on that before we move that one forward.
The keyword is reasonable, and the reporting elements related to restraint, so the short version is no, but there are requirements around reporting and use and training, which we can come back to and explain in a month from now.
Excellent. Any other discussion? And I will entertain a motion for the 3 documents, special ed related services for eligible students. This is board policy 2161, 5400 board policy, and 6220.
I will motion to approve the second reading of policy considerations 2161 BP, 5400 BP, 6220 BP.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. So just in follow-up, Rick, could you prepare some questions that
Okay.
you specifically?
This is further clarification.
Yep, excellent, thank you. All right, now we have the consent agenda. I would love a motion.
There are no questions. I motion to approve items 1 to 7 on the consent agenda.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And next item is our surplus request. I will need a motion for that.
Motion to approve the disposal of surplus items as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, I'm not hearing you. I'm looking at you. You're good? Okay, motion passes. And now for the student representative report.
Yay. All right, let me pull this guy up, if you don't mind. All right, guys, how's it going tonight? So thank you all for having me. So I just want to talk about some stuff that's been going on, especially at the high school. So we all know it was this Valentine's Day. That was really cool. We did some show some love sales is what we called it. We were selling rubber ducks, sweet tarts, candies, and chocolate roses, and that was really cool.
We also did our Spirit Week, and today we had a cute little fan favorite dress up. And tomorrow we're going to be doing a class competition, which will be our Valentine's Color War, where all grades will dress up in V-Day colors, and so that's going to be really fun. So also we have our leadership, ASD, our clubs, and sports. We all have been doing these seminars lately. We've now had 2 seminars, and in our first seminar we discussed some, concerns and issues that we saw in our school. So all the leaders kind of came together and we talked about those problems, and we also made solutions to those. So we ended up doing a second seminar where we had 5 groups and 5 posters prompts that were set up. And the students came up with solutions to those prompts. After the seminar was over, all the student leaders were able to go around and take something off of that poster and find a way to implement that into their group, their club, their sport, so on. So it's really cool to be able to see that we're going to be implementing some of those solutions. The main idea of that was just how can we as leaders promote the good things that are going on in our schools. The leadership class is now coming up with group projects to do to implement equity into our schools, clubs, and groups. My group personally is coming up with a green team idea. Our goal is to educate and kind of highlight the importance of keeping our community clean, healthy, and happy. This group will be inclusive to everyone once it's approved and getting started on, so that's really exciting. So we also had, as you guys saw earlier, we had our inclusive basketball game where students from our special education department were just absolute ballers, if I'm being honest. It was really awesome to be able to see an activity like this in our schools, and I'm just super excited to see more. We also have, as we were talking about earlier as well, we have our OHS wrestling team going to the MAC Classic at the Tacoma Dome for the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association, which our girls wrestling team has been named the academic state champions. So they'll be honored at the Dome as well for the highest cumulative GPA of any 2A girls for the wrestling team, that being 3.59. So that is just awesome. So that wraps up my report. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. We got to see a little bit of the work from your seminars, tackling the solutions, or tackling the problems, and then the student-led solutions. I love that.
That was so awesome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I will open it up to board comment.
I'm just super excited about the levy. I think that a lot of folks came together in the community, even some folks that would not normally vote for something like that. So I'm very proud of our community. I do know that there were some places that did not pass. I have some friends that work in, the district. I think it was Bethel. They didn't have any, so they got a hard road to go. So I just want to say thank you. I appreciate that. Whether you agree with what the schools are doing or what we can and can't do, there's a ton of people who have no other option. And these funds are going to go to the things that make them happy, the reasons they go to school, the extracurricular things, the activity buses, the things they need the most. And going back to what we were hearing from that the Healthy Student Survey, they need it now more than ever. So Orting is a special place. We're going to fix the things that we know we want to fix. These mandates, they're going to end. We're going to get back to normal. We're going to come together. And we have a whole lot of students coming our way. So we got to build new schools. I mean, it's just the way that I love the fact that we're able to be transparent and talk in these things with the town hall style. And when we did that, that was really great. You guys came with good questions. Ed handled it really well. The back and forth dialogue was nice because that brings us together when we can have understanding of things that we may not understand. And that is what makes Orting special. And I'm very happy to be a part of it. I'm very proud of Orting for what we did. In spite of people not liking everything that's going on right now, I think it was a really bold move and it kind of puts us in a good light.
Yeah, thank you for bringing up the board. We had a lot of good conversations. It's easier to have conversations in that kind of setting than it is in a formal board meeting. So
Yeah, we talked back and forth.
Yeah.
That was great. So and we're going to do that more.
yeah,
So.
I don't see it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, even-
I'm also going to throw out one more thank you to our community for the levy, but I can't say it any better than our kids did, so I'm just gonna thank you for that. And also, I know that many of you are here tonight because you have something really important to say, and I'm really glad that you take the time to come and share that with us. And know that we appreciate that. We value that very much. So thank you.
Anything else?
Well, I appreciate the way you guys present it. It's, you know, you have facts, you're light, you can understand what you're saying. It's very good, and you did a great presentation, so I appreciate that.
Yes. Please do.
Board, just as a reminder, with Governor Inslee's announcement today, just so we can say public and know where that sits, Governor Inslee has lifted the order for the statewide mask mandate. But wait, there's more. So it's lifted as of March 21st. That does not necessarily guarantee local health departments will also follow suit. So in our current health department, for Tacoma Pierce County, they look at metrics to include vaccination status, hospitalization rate, COVID transmission rate, and death rate. Much of the conversation you hear from your constituency doesn't make it to the Department of Health. That's not on their metric radar. So they don't currently consider things like social, emotional health, mental health, depression, anxiety. And you hear those stories. So what we are going to do in our newsletter update is just remind our constituency that now this pressure and decision shifts to local departments of health. If people have a voice and an interest in making known their feelings, sooner rather than later would be a great time to reach out to those officials and let them know, because we don't know when we're going to hear affirmatively of what that next step looks like. I would say probably by the end of the first week in March. So what we believe will come next is a position from the State Department of Health as well as local to determine whether the mandate would be in place. As you remember previously, schools were lumped in the same category as hospitals and nursing homes. We don't know their intent, but I would encourage our constituency and I'll remind people in a newsletter to reach out to local Department of Health, because that's the next place where this decision will shift. So although we're encouraged by what we see, we are not quite sure what to expect yet, and we'll communicate with you and our constituency as we know more. But I would say having voices go to local Department of Health would be my best advice to make sure that is heard before a decision is reached at that level.
I had a question, I want to clarify something on that. You were saying, so what we had from that student survey that shows the level of student unhappiness, depression, thoughts of suicide, all those things that are off the charts right now. So you're saying none of those numbers of metrics have any bearing on the decision of the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department on whether or not they would or would not implement anything. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Today we had the entirety of Pierce County Superintendency meeting with local officials at the health department, and we implored them to not continue with the mandate for schools for all of the reasons that we have talked about at this table and that you've heard. However, that decision will land there, and
It'll be up to them, is what you're saying.
that's what I'm saying. And so if one had an opinion on the matter, very soon it would be good to send emails or calls or reach out to that constituency. We're trying to make our voices heard as an advocacy group because there are a lot more considerations other than transmission rates that we go through and live. And we wanted to tell our story, but I'm reminding our constituency that the next place that decision will go will be the health department. And so it'd be good to get your voice heard if you want that to be part of the decision.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, the board will go into an executive session. Tonight we've set aside 45 minutes to discuss real estate and a public employee. So I will need to ask everyone to leave the room, and we have estimated the time that will be in executive session to be about 1 hour. It's quite a long meeting.
And there's not a lot of special stuff.
No, the meeting adjourns after executive session, so